Hey, I'm Sophia. Before we start, go grab a snack and get comfortable for a bit. These stories take their time, and they are told the way I'd tell a friend late at night. I really hope you enjoy them. This story has one update on it and my own opinion at the end. Comment and tell me if you agree. Let's begin. After years of being overlooked, I won the lottery and threw a party to show my family. My aunt was already halfway through the front gate when my brother's car pulled up and the headlights washed the backyard in a harsh white glare, like a stage spotlight I didn't ask for. I could hear the rented speakers humming with that faint electrical buzz, smell the barbecue smoke curling off the cheap catering trays, and feel sweat collecting at the base of my spine under a dress I'd bought specifically because it made me look like someone people listen to. The fairy lights I'd spent 2 hours untangling trembled in the breeze. My hands were shaking around the champagne flute. Not from excitement, not really, but from that old, familiar dread that hits right before my family reminds me who I'm supposed to be. The moment my brother stepped out, he did the same scan he always does, eyes moving fast over what I'd built like he was looking for something to criticize. He spotted the "Congratulations, Lena" banner, snorted under his breath, and said loud enough for my cousins to hear, "Wow. Someone thinks she's important." My mum laughed immediately, automatic and bright, like she'd been waiting for permission. I felt my face go hot, and I forced my mouth into a smile that didn't match the tightness in my chest. "Hi, Ryan," I said, and my voice sounded steadier than I felt. He gave me a quick, hard hug that was more like a pat-down than affection, then leaned close and murmured, "So, what's this actually about? You didn't throw a party just because you got a promotion." His breath smelled like mint gum and entitlement. I looked past him at my dad, who wouldn't meet my eyes, and I realized this was the exact moment the night was going to split into two versions, the one they assumed and the one I'd planned. It was a Tuesday night 3 weeks earlier when I checked my ticket in the car outside my apartment, because I didn't want to be disappointed in my kitchen where I could see the stack of bills and the sink I'd been too tired to scrub. I'd bought the ticket at the servo on a whim, the way people do when they're running on fumes and need something that isn't work, isn't family, isn't the quiet weight of always being the responsible one. I remember the fluorescent lights, the smell of hot pies, the cashier barely looking up. I scratched the numbers with my keys because my nails were too short. When the app flashed winner, my brain did this strange thing where it refused to translate the word into reality. I stared and stared until my eyes watered. Then I started laughing, but it was that sound you make when something is too big and your body doesn't know where to put it. I checked again. And again. I drove home with my hands at 10 and 2 like a learner driver, because suddenly everything felt fragile. When I got inside, I sat on the floor by the couch and whispered, "No way," to an empty room like the room could correct me. I didn't call my family first. That's the part that still stings when I say it out loud, but it's true. I called my best friend, Mara, because Mara is the person who has watched me be invisible in my own family for years and never once suggested I make myself smaller to keep the peace. She picked up on the first ring, and I could barely get the words out. "I think I just won," I said, and my voice sounded like it belonged to a kid. There was a pause, then Mara said, "Lena, breathe. How much?" I told her the number, and she went quiet in a way that felt reverent. "Okay," she said, finally practical. "You tell no one." "Not yet. You call the lottery people, you lock down your accounts, you find a lawyer and a financial advisor. And you do not, under any circumstances, tell your family until you have a plan." The fact she said it so firmly made me realize how obvious the danger was. Because my family doesn't do joy without turning it into a group project where everyone gets a say. I've been overlooked in my family since I can remember. Not in a dramatic Cinderella way, more in the constant paper cut way where your achievements are acknowledged only long enough to pivot back to someone else. My brother Ryan is 2 years older than me, and he's always been the story. Ryan's football. Ryan's girlfriend. Ryan's business idea he'll definitely do one day. My parents talk about him like he's a weather system they can't control but must always monitor. With me, it's like they assumed I'd be fine, so they never bothered to notice what fine cost me. When I got into uni on a scholarship, my mum said, that's great, but don't act better than anyone. When I got my first job, my dad asked if it was a real job or just office stuff. When I paid off my student debt early, my brother joked that I must be boring. When I got promoted last year, my parents missed the dinner I planned to celebrate because Ryan needed help moving. Then they told me I was selfish for being upset because family comes first. So when the lottery win happened, I knew exactly what would come with it. Hands out, guilt trips, demands disguised as jokes, my parents acting like my money was now a family asset. I could already hear Ryan saying, "We should invest it," like he'd earned it by existing. I could hear my mom telling me not to tell anyone because people will judge. I could hear my dad saying, "You'll do the right thing," the way he says it when he means do what we want. That's why I planned the party. Not because I wanted to throw money in their faces. Not because I wanted to become some cartoon villain. I planned it because I wanted one controlled moment where I could speak without being interrupted, where I could look them all in the eye and see what they did when my life stopped being convenient. I rented my parents' dream scenario. String lights, good food, nice venue, and I made it mine. And before I told a single relative, I did what Mara told me to do. I built the fence before I opened the gate. I met with a lawyer. I set up a trust. I put the money somewhere it couldn't be accessed by guilt. I changed my phone number and kept the old one active on a cheap plan for family communication. I wrote down every debt I wanted to wipe out. Mine, not theirs. I decided exactly what I would and wouldn't do. I rehearsed it in the mirror like an insane person because I know how my family's voices can turn my backbone into jelly. I also did one more thing. I created envelopes. Not cash. Not checks. Boundaries. Each envelope had a letter. Short, clear. A few had gifts, small, thoughtful, personal. My parents' envelope had a plan. I would pay off their mortgage directly to the bank, but only if they signed an agreement that it was a one-time gift and no one could come back asking for more later. Ryan's envelope had nothing but words, because Ryan has taken enough from me in 1,000 little ways. My aunts and uncles got polite notes and a donation in the family name to a local charity I actually respect because I know how quickly relatives appear when there's money. And then I sent invitations that said, "Celebrating a new chapter for Lena." Formal. No plus ones without RSVP. My mom called immediately. "What is this?" she demanded, suspicious. I said, "It's a party." She said, "For what?" I said, "For me." She went quiet like I'd spoken a foreign language. Now, back in the backyard, the night was moving. Guests laughed. Music swelled. My cousin's little kid ran past holding a cupcake. Someone clinked a glass. My dad finally approached me, shoulders hunched, as if he expected a scolding. "Lena," he said carefully, "this is very nice." "Thank you," I replied. He looked around at the catering and lights and hired bartender, and his eyes narrowed like he was doing math. "How much did this cost?" I almost laughed because of course that was his first question. Not "Are you happy?" Not "What are we celebrating?" Just cost. I said, "Enough." Ryan slid in beside him, grinning like he'd found the punchline. "Okay," he announced loudly. "Stop playing mysterious. What happened? Did you win something? Are you engaged? Are you moving?" He leaned closer. "Did you finally get rich?" The word finally made my stomach twist, because I'd been rich in effort for years and none of them noticed. I stepped onto the little platform near the back, where the microphone stand was set up. My heart hammered. My palms were damp. Mara stood in the crowd and gave me the smallest nod, like, "You're good. You're here. Speak." I tapped the mic. The sound squeaked and the room quieted in waves. First the close people, then the ones farther back turning their heads. I could feel the attention settle on my skin like heat. "Hi," I said, and my voice trembled once before it steadied. "Thank you all for coming. I know some of you thought this was random." A couple of laughs. Ryan's was the loudest. I smiled, but it didn't reach my eyes. It's not random. It's intentional. I wanted to gather the people in my life for one moment where I could say something clearly. My mom's face tightened already. She hates moments. She hates anything that might expose feelings. I've spent most of my life being the one who's fine, I continued. The one who doesn't need help, doesn't need attention, doesn't need celebrating. I've also spent most of my life quietly achieving things that mattered to me and watching them get brushed past like background noise. The room went still in that uncomfortable way family rooms go still when truth shows up. Ryan muttered, "Here we go," under his breath. I gripped the mic stand. 3 weeks ago, something happened to me that changed my life. I won the lottery. The reaction was instant. Gasps, laughter, someone saying, "No way," a cousin squealing, hands flying to mouths. My aunt grabbed her husband's arm. My dad's face went white, then red. My mum's eyes widened, then darted around the crowd like she was already thinking about who would hear. Ryan's grin turned sharp. "I knew it," he said, loud, like he'd guessed the ending. I lifted a hand. "I'm telling you this because I don't want rumors. I don't want whispers. I want it said out loud in one place by me, and I also want to be clear about something else." My throat tightened. I could feel my pulse in my ears. This money doesn't belong to the family. It belongs to me. The room shifted. The air changed. People who'd been excited went quiet because they heard the boundary and didn't like the implication. Ryan laughed. "Relax," he said. No one said it did. My dad stepped forward, voice low but firm. "Lena, don't say things like that. Of course it's yours. But you'll do the right thing." There it was. The hook. The old guilt-laced phrase. I nodded slowly. "I am doing the right thing," I said. For once, the right thing for me. My mum hissed my name like a warning. "Not here." "Yes, here," I replied, and my voice surprised me with how calm it sounded. "Because you always want me to keep things private when it might make you look bad." "I'm done with that." Ryan's face hardened. "So what is this? A lecture? You throw a party and then shame everyone." I looked at him. "I'm not shaming anyone," I said. "I'm explaining reality." And then I stepped down from the platform and walked to the long table where the envelopes were lined up like place cards. I picked up my parents' envelope first and held it in both hands, feeling the paper tremble slightly. "Mom." "Dad," I said. "This is for you." My mum's face softened instantly, relief flooding her features because she assumed what it meant. She took it like it was owed. My dad took it from her before she could open it because control is his reflex. Ryan moved in, eyes bright. "What about me?" he asked, half joking, half not. I picked up his envelope last, deliberately. "You'll get yours," I said. My dad tore open the envelope right there. He scanned the letter. His eyes moved quickly, then slowed. His mouth tightened. You're paying off the mortgage?" he said, voice cracking with disbelief. "Yes," I said. "Directly to the bank." My mum exhaled dramatically, like she'd been holding her breath for 20 years. "Oh, thank God," she whispered, and I felt the tiny sting of her gratitude being aimed at the money, not at me. Dad kept reading. Then his face changed. "What is this?" he demanded, pointing at the bottom. "An agreement? A contract?" "It's a boundary," I said. Mum's relief evaporated. "Lena, why would we sign something? We're your parents." "Exactly," I said. "You're my parents. And I've learned that family in this house often means you do what we want and you don't question it. I'm not doing that anymore." Ryan's voice rose. "Are you serious? You're making Mum and Dad sign paperwork to accept your help." "I'm making Mum and Dad acknowledge that this isn't a forever tap," I said, "and that no one gets to use guilt to keep it running." My dad's jaw clenched. "This is insulting." "It's protective," I replied. Ryan snatched his envelope before I could hand it to him properly. He ripped it open, expecting something juicy. His eyes flicked over the single-page letter, and the grin fell clean off his face. "What is this?" he snapped. "You didn't put anything in here." "It's a letter," I said. He read aloud, voice dripping. "Ryan, I love you as my brother, but I'm not funding your life. If you ask me for money, the answer is no. If you try to pressure Mom and Dad to pressure me, the answer is still no. He looked up, eyes blazing. What the hell is this? It's the truth, I said. Ryan stepped closer, voice low and sharp. You think you're better than us now. My hands trembled, but I didn't move back. I don't think I'm better, I said. I think I'm done being treated like I'm less. My dad slammed the letter against his palm. You're making a scene? I looked at the guests, at the quiet faces, at Mara watching me like she was ready to catch me if I fell. No, I said. I'm refusing to be quiet. And right there, with the party still humming awkwardly around us, my mom started crying. Not soft tears, but angry, embarrassed tears. You couldn't just do something nice, she sobbed. You had to turn it into an attack. That sentence hit my chest like a weight because it was exactly how they always flipped it. I give, I share, I help, and the moment I set a limit, I'm attacking. I felt my eyes burn. And that is where I'm going to stop the story midway like you asked, because the next part is when I realized the party wasn't the reveal. Their reaction was, my family has a very specific addiction, the comfort of me being fine. They don't just overlook me by accident. They rely on me being the stable background character, so they can keep pouring their energy into Ryan's chaos without feeling guilty. Ryan is the loudest example of it, but he's not the whole problem. He's a symptom that got rewarded. The second money entered the room, he didn't ask how I felt or what I wanted. He treated it like a resource that needed a manager, and of course he assumed that manager should be him. My dad's, you'll do the right thing, is basically emotional blackmail wearing a respectable suit. It's his way of making my choices about his approval. And my mom crying and calling boundaries an attack is classic. It's not about the mortgage or the contract. It's about control. She wants the gift with zero discomfort, zero accountability, and zero change in how I'm treated. The crazy part is I am doing something generous. I could have disappeared with the winnings and let them keep their mortgage and their opinions. Instead, I tried to help while protecting myself, and they still found a way to make me the villain because I didn't let them grab the steering wheel. If I learned anything from this moment, it's that some people don't want you happy, they want you available. And availability is exactly what I'm withdrawing. Update. So the night of the party ended exactly as messy as you'd expect. After my mom started crying and my dad accused me of humiliating them, Ryan did what Ryan always does. He escalated to force everyone's attention onto him. He started talking louder, swearing, making it a spectacle so the whole backyard turned into a stage for his outrage. You're acting like we're strangers, he shouted, waving the letter like a prop. You win money, and suddenly you're the queen of boundaries. Where was this energy when we were kids? And I had to carry you through life. That line made a few relatives murmur because it was such an obvious rewrite. Ryan didn't carry me through anything. I carried myself. I carried him emotionally half the time by being the easy sibling who didn't create trouble. Mara stepped forward then, bless her, and said, calm but loud enough to cut through, Lena doesn't owe anyone her winnings. And she's still paying your parents' mortgage. Maybe say thank you. Ryan spun on her like a dog hearing a whistle. Who asked you? I heard myself say. I did. She's my guest. Respect her. My dad snapped. Don't talk to your brother like that. I looked at him and said, don't talk to me like I'm 12. That's when my dad's face went hard in a way I don't see often. So this is what you've become, he said, like I turned into something ugly. I nodded once. This is what I've always been. I replied. You just didn't like it when it came with a spine. Ryan stormed out. He didn't even say goodbye. He just grabbed his keys and left, tires spitting gravel at the curb like a little tantrum punctuation mark. Mum followed him to the gate crying harder, telling him to calm down, then turned back and said, look what you did. I didn't answer. I couldn't. I stood there in my backyard with the fairy lights and the food and the awkward guests and felt this strange quiet, like my body had stopped trying to bargain with reality. The next morning, the messages started. First it was Mum. We need to talk. You embarrassed your father. Then Dad. Do not involve outsiders in family matters again. Then Ryan. You're selfish. You always were. Don't pretend you're some saint. Then my aunties and uncles. We're so happy for you, followed by, can you help with, in the same breath, like, congratulations were a coin you insert to get the money machine to work. Here's what I did, because a lot of you asked. I stuck to the plan. I emailed my parents the mortgage payoff plan and the agreement. I told them, if you sign, I'll pay it off directly to the bank within 72 hours. If you don't, I won't. I love you, but I'm not negotiating or arguing. My mom called me immediately, sobbing, saying, you're making us beg. I said, I'm making you sign a boundary. She said, your father will never sign that. I said, then the mortgage won't be paid off by me. 3 days later, Dad signed. Mom signed too, but she didn't stop being angry about it. She acted like I'd forced them at gunpoint. I paid the mortgage off. I got confirmation from the bank. I forwarded it to them with one line. It's done. No confetti, no speech. Ryan tried a different angle. He called me late at night, suddenly soft, suddenly nostalgic. Look, he said, I overreacted. I'm just stressed. I've got plans, you know? This could help the whole family. We could invest it together. I could start that business. I asked him what business. He paused. Then he said, you know, the one I told you about. He hadn't told me about anything. He just wanted me to feel like I was forgetting something important. I said, no. He went quiet, then cold. So, you're really going to let me struggle? I almost laughed at the repetition of my mom's language. You're not struggling, I said. You're uncomfortable because you can't access something you feel entitled to. He hung up. Then he tried to go around me. He started pressuring my parents. Mom called me and said, Ryan's just asking for a small amount to get ahead. I said, no, she said, he's family. I said, so am I. She said, he needs it more. I said, then you give it to him. Silence. Then she whispered, we can't. That was the whole truth. They couldn't save him, so they wanted me to. Ryan then showed up at my apartment. He stood in the hallway like he belonged there and said, open the door. I didn't. I spoke through it. Go home, I said. He said, you're scared? I said, I'm not doing this. He said, you're ruining the family. I said, you're trying to. He kicked my door once, hard enough that the frame rattled, and I called the building security. He left before they arrived, but not before shouting loud enough for my neighbor to hear. Enjoy being alone with your money. I documented everything. I screenshotted messages. I saved voicemails. I told my lawyer. I upgraded my apartment security. I started therapy because even when you know you're right, your nervous system doesn't always catch up. And here's the part that surprised me. Once the initial chaos settled, I felt lighter. Not happy, but quieter. Like my body stopped bracing for the next guilt trip. I also did something that felt scandalous. I used some of the money for myself without apology. I took a week off work. I booked a small coastal cabin. I slept. I ate in silence. I watched the ocean and let my brain be blank. Then I came back and made a plan for my life. Investments, a house deposit, a fund for future kids if I ever choose that, a donation commitment to a women's refuge that helped my friend years ago. I moved my life forward in practical steps instead of emotional bargaining. Okay. Now I'll continue and finish the story. 2 months after the party, my parents invited me to Sunday lunch like nothing happened. That's their favorite technique. Pretend the conflict was a weather event that passed, so no one has to talk about it. I went anyway because I'm still learning where my limits are, and because part of me wanted to see if they'd changed even a little. Ryan was there. Of course. He sat at the table like a king who'd forgiven me. When I walked in, he smiled and said, "Hey, rich girl." I didn't smile back. I hung my coat, washed my hands, and sat down quietly. My mom fussed with plates too loudly. My dad cleared his throat more than usual. Halfway through lunch, Ryan leaned back and said casually, "So, I've been thinking." Since you paid the mortgage off, Mom and Dad are basically free now. They could help me with a deposit. It's kind of like you helped me too, in a way. My mom's fork froze midair. My dad's jaw tightened. I looked at Ryan and said, "No." He blinked. "No what?" "No to this conversation," I said. "No to you framing my gift as your benefit. No to you using Mom and Dad as a lever." My dad finally spoke. "Ryan," he said, voice heavy enough. Ryan laughed like Dad was joking.
"What?"
"I'm just saying." Dad slammed his hand lightly on the table, not violent, but firm. "Enough," he repeated. It was the first time I'd ever seen my dad draw a line with Ryan instead of with me. My throat tightened so fast it hurt. Ryan stared at him like he'd been betrayed. "You're taking her side?" Dad's eyes flicked to me, then away, like it was difficult. "I'm taking the side of what's right," he said. "You are not entitled to your sister's money." Ryan's face flushed. "So, she's turned you against me now." Mom whispered, "Ryan, stop." He pushed his chair back.
"Fine," he snapped.
"Enjoy your little perfect life." He stormed out, the same way he always does. But this time, no one chased him. My mom sat there shaking slightly, eyes wet. "He's going to hate us," she whispered, like that was the worst thing that could happen. I looked at her and said, gently but clearly, "He already hates me when I don't give him what he wants." Silence stretched. My dad finally said, quietly, We didn't see you," and the sentence sounded like it cost him. Not properly. I didn't cry. I didn't hug him. I just nodded slowly because grief for a living family is complicated. "I know," I said. After lunch, my mom walked me to my car. She held my hand for a second and said, "I'm proud of you." Then, as if her body couldn't tolerate the softness, she added, "You didn't have to do it like that at the party." I looked at her and said, "If I didn't do it like that, you'd still be pretending it wasn't happening."
She didn't argue.
She just squeezed my hand again, then let go. That night, I went home and sat on my balcony with a cup of tea. I thought about the lottery win, yes, but more than that, I thought about the quieter win. The moment I stopped auditioning for my own family. The money gave me options. The boundaries gave me peace. And peace, I'm learning, is worth more than any number printed on a ticket. Ryan is the kind of person who confuses attention with love and entitlement with destiny. He isn't evil in a comic book way, but he is deeply practiced at making every situation about him. The lottery didn't change him. It just exposed him. The second he smelled money, he treated it like a family asset that needed his leadership, which is hilarious because his leadership is mostly just talking louder than everyone else. He also uses the same emotional script my mom uses. So you'll let me struggle, because in this family, guilt is the only currency people respect. My mom is softer on the surface, but her softness can be manipulative. She cries to redirect, she worries about appearances to control behavior, and she labels boundaries as attacks because if she admits boundaries are necessary, she has to admit she helped create the environment that required them. My dad is the quiet enabler. He wants peace so badly that he'll sacrifice the person least likely to cause a scene, which has been me for most of my life. He isn't a villain either, but he's been lazy about fairness because unfairness was convenient. The most entertaining part of this whole mess is that my family expected the lottery to turn me into a walking ATM, and instead it turned me into someone who finally speaks in full sentences. They wanted a windfall they could manage through me. What they got was me managing myself. Paying off the mortgage was generous, but the real gift I gave myself was refusing to let that generosity become a leash. And honestly, if you're reading this and you're the fine one in your family, please hear this. Your role is not your identity. You're allowed to stop being convenient. You're allowed to disappoint people who only like you when you're useful. Money didn't make me brave. It just removed the fear that kept me quiet. The bravery was always there, buried under years of being trained to feel guilty for taking up space. Now I'm taking up space anyway.